Hey guys, I'm Handyman Graham, and today I'm making an absolutely crazy telescopic C-shaped side table for under $30. In today's video, Alexandra has tasked me with making a C-shaped side table for Victoria and Will's bedroom makeover, but specifically this is gonna be just for Victoria, who works from home, so she needs this table that she can work while she's sitting in a chair, or in bed, or in another part of the house that she can change the height of depending on where she's working. Alexandra requested just one design characteristic, and that's gonna be a checkerboard tabletop. So using that and the inspo from the article, C-shaped side tables, I'm gonna try to make this table using as little new material as possible. As always, I gotta start putting some ideas down on paper to see what we're working with. For the tabletop, I'm thinking about making it out of some contrasting wood tones, but I don't think I have enough wood scraps to make the base out of it as well, so I can probably find like a solid piece of wood to use as the base, and that's okay because this is gonna be hidden underneath a chair or underneath another piece of furniture. For the support column, I'm also gonna be making out of wood, but I'm also gonna try to figure out like a contraption that allows the tabletop to raise up and down. Okay, so it is day one of starting Victoria's armchair table. I was like, okay, so how am I gonna get like a telescopic column for this? Like, I don't know how I'm gonna make one. I'm gonna make it out of wood, then it's not very approachable for people to do at home. And so I was like, well, hang on a second. I've got this like paint stick. It's made out of aluminum. It's super strong. It's meant to like, have a lot of forces acted upon it while you're rolling. And then for the base, I had this old iron pipe just hanging around the workshop, and it is the exact diameter of the interior of this paint stick. So I can screw that to the base. I'm gonna make like a sheath out of wood that will slide over this. It'll look like a nice solid piece of wood, and it'll allow Victoria to press the button to raise and lower this. For the column, I'm thinking of using this oak that I found outside. It's glued to some plywood and to some other stuff underneath, so I just kind of have to clean up these pieces a little bit, get the solid pieces of oak aside. So I'm just using a pry bar and a hammer to separate this like junk plywood that's nailed to the backside of it, and then I'm just cleaning it up by planing it down with my thickness planer. Okay, so I'm gonna cut up that oak on my table saw, but I have to figure out the angle of the blade and the thickness of the wood in order to make a cylinder to the size that I need it to be. So this is a stave cut calculator that I found online. You enter the unit that you're measuring in, the number of pieces, the diameter of the shell, and it calculates the exact angle that you need to cut every single piece at. I have 10 pieces, and every single cut needs to be 18 degrees for a combined angle of 36 degrees per cut. Then when I glue it all together, I can take that over to the lathe and carve it into a round shape. I'm using a digital angle finder attached to the table saw blade to find a perfect 18 degrees. So this will help me figure out the angle of my blade. And then I'm setting the fence at 1 3/8 away from the blade. I need 10 pieces of this red oak to make this cylinder, so to save material, after each cut, I'm just flipping the piece over rather than wasting material. I'm not gonna get a continuous wood grain around this cylinder, which is okay, because I just don't have enough material here in order to do that. I'm using some blue painter's tape to attach all of the pieces together, and using a liberal amount of wood glue and just taping everything together until the wood glue dries. I'm also applying some ratchet straps here just for added clamping strength. Okay, nice. I got this all glued up, so I'm just gonna leave it vertical overnight. Hopefully that glue will run down the inside of the column there. But it is looking pretty nice and circular. That turned out absolutely great. I'm really happy with that. I kind of just like sped through it. Didn't really spend too much time on finer details of it, but it turned out really nice, and I'm happy with it. It was free wood I found outside in the snow. It's red oak, so it's super strong. It's gonna look great as the column, so I'm gonna let that dry overnight. I'm gonna come in tomorrow, and we're gonna carve it on the lathe. So, see you tomorrow. Now that the wood glue is dry, I'm attaching the column to my lathe and carving it down until smooth. And to finish it off, I'm sanding it from 50 grit all the way up to 220 grit sandpaper. In order for the iron pipe floor flange to sit flush inside the column, I'm routing out all the materials so that it can sit nice and flush inside the wood column. Nice. I'm cutting down the iron pipe using my metal cutoff saw so I can fit inside the paint pole without it bumping into the extension piece. For the top, I'm tracing the interior decagonal shape onto a scrap piece of red oak plywood. This piece is gonna sit at the top of the column and is gonna hold the paint pole center in the negative space. Wow, pretty good. All right, so I'm gonna start the tabletop now. I have a lot of scraps. So I have a lot of the red oak that was left over from the column, mahogany that was from an old table I found. I have some walnut here, some white oak. So I'm thinking of like cutting everything down into strips, all the same size, gluing up some panels. I don't know, maybe like creating something kind of unique. I think doing like some sort of mosaic with like a cool design might be a little bit nicer. Gluing up end grain is always so confusing and it like hurts my brain to think about. What I gotta do is just bring everything down to the same thickness, and then I gotta cut everything into strips, and then I can glue it all together. So that's what I'm gonna do now, is just run everything through my thickness planer, bring everything down to the same size, and we'll go from there. I'm using my thickness planer just to bring all these scraps of wood down to the exact same thickness. And then cutting them into equal sized strips using my table saw. And the last step, which is not that necessary, is that I'm just putting them back through the thickness planer just to clean up all the saw marks before gluing them together. I'm gluing the strips together in 4 batches. For a tabletop this size, it's a lot easier to do 4 panels rather than one big long one. Now that the panels are dry, I'm cleaning up all the old dried wood glue with a belt sander, and this is gonna make the glue up process just a whole bunch easier. I'm using my table saw and a table saw crosscut jig to cut these panels back into strips, but I'm making them 1 3/4 inches wide. I'm putting the strips off to the side in the exact same pattern that I cut them from so I don't lose track. All right, so now I can glue these strips back into a panel, but I'm alternating the wood grain to make a checkerboard pattern. Same process as before. I'm using a whole bunch of wood glue and some clamps and letting this sit overnight to dry. All right, it's the next morning and I've just unclamped our cutting board. So we have cutting board number 1. It's a beast. It's big, it's thick. And then we have cutting board number 2. This is gonna be our tabletop. And then this is just gonna be a cutting board that I'll make as a gift for someone. I'm just gonna cut the end square on the table saw, glue these other pieces together. Then I'm going to move over to the base. Now that the wood glue is dry again, I'm just cleaning up the sides, making sure that they're nice and parallel using my table saw. This will give me a nice, straight, clean surface to glue even more pieces of wood to. End grain cutting boards and end grain whatever, it is a really big process that I'm actually learning how to do myself. So my tip for you guys here is make sure you buy enough wood glue to see you through to the end of the project, and also make sure you have time to complete this too. Don't feel like you have to get this done in like 1 or 2 days. This is something that's probably gonna take more like a week. The majority of the time that it takes to make one of these boards is actually just waiting for the wood glue to dry. So it's kind of like you're hurrying up to wait. All right, so while this tabletop is drying, I'm gonna just jump straight into making the base for the table. This is a piece of wood that I found on the sidewalk that had been abandoned. It's a really nice piece of wood. I thought I could save some time here by just cutting out a nice shaped base, calling it a day. I was thinking about doing like an end grain base for this table, and I'm like, I think it's still gonna be nice. It's a nice piece of wood, but it won't take away from the end grain checkerboard look on the top. I want this base to be pretty much the exact same size as the tabletop. I'm using a table saw jig to cut one edge and then flipping it over and just using my regular table saw to cut a parallel edge. I'm using my crosscut sled on my table saw just to create nice and square edges. I'm finishing up the cut with my jigsaw, and then going in after with my flush cut trim bit on my router just to clean up that edge. I'm using my jigsaw to create that like C shape in the corners so that they're nice and round. And then cleaning it up using my tabletop belt sander just to make everything nice and smooth. And lastly, we need this table to sit nice and flat on the ground. So I'm just throwing it onto the CNC machine using a surfacing bit just to flatten everything, and then flipping the board over and flattening the other face. Okay, that was so sick. Still really thick. I did have to remove a lot of material, but I have a nice and perfectly flat base to this table. I think this is gonna be so sick. So I'm flattening the tabletop just like I did with the base on the CNC machine. Because my glue ups are never perfect, some pieces of wood were kind of like sticking up, some were down. So this CNC machine is just gonna bring everything down to the exact same level and make everything nice and clean. You can do this without a CNC machine. There are plenty of tutorials online how to make a surfacing jig for your router, which is totally approachable and DIY friendly. That is so sick. Next, I'm cleaning up the edges of the tabletop using my table saw. And I'm literally just copying the same profile as the base onto the tabletop using the circle jig on my router and a jigsaw to make those rounded corners. Nice. Oh, sick. Okay, now everything is cut. It's time to start sanding. So I'm sanding everything using 50 grit belt sander all the way up to 220 grit sandpaper on an orbital sander. So I just wanted to test the height of the table now that I have all the components together. I just put the table off to the side, and my initial thoughts are, you know, that's a good height, but I think it needs to drop down a couple inches. 3 inch. I'll start with 3 inches, and then we'll go from there. It's perfect. That's a great height because it can swivel just right over the armrest. Yeah, no, that's perfect. I'm using my router with a round over bit to round all the edges on the tabletop and the base except for the very bottom face because we want this table to sit nice and flush on the ground. Okay, I think it's time to secure the painter post inside the column. But I just want to show you guys what I've done so far. I've got the button I made on the lathe. I cut down the paint stick to the same amount as the column, and I bolted it in place. I can put this over top, line it up to the button. I've got this decagonal piece, which is gonna lock the paint stick in place so that button never shifts, so that you hit that button every time, you'll be able to raise and lower it. So I'm gonna just have to glue this in place, hammer it down, and we're freaking gold. We're doing very well. We're almost there, guys. Oh my gosh, it works. It works. Okay, so we got the column sorted out. We got it screwed onto the base. But how is the tabletop gonna stick to the column? And I have something for you. It's this. This is a hardwood broom brush. Looks like it's made out of oak based on the grain. It screws on there nice and tight. And then we're gonna screw this broom to the bottom of the tabletop. We're not gonna glue it. It's end grain meets cross grain. So if I were to glue it, expansion, contraction over time, it's gonna fail. So we're gonna put some screws. And then what's great about this whole thing is that she can take the tabletop off if she needs to move it. I'm gonna cut off these bristles and then start making this into a bracket. This cost me like $4 at the dollar store. Pretty good deal if you ask me. Okay, it is time to apply the finish. So I sanded everything, everything's nice and smooth, and now I'm gonna put this hardwood floor finish on that I always use, that YouTubers love to use as well. It's Rubio Monocoat. This is just their pure color, so there's no additional pigment involved. So I'm gonna do the tabletop base, I'm gonna do the column, and then we can walk away. Okay guys, C-stand is done. It's just drying over there in the corner. So, it is Friday afternoon. I'm gonna clean up the workshop, and then we are starting the makeover on Monday. So I can't wait to show you guys what it's gonna look like when it's all assembled and installed in Victoria's bedroom on Monday. So have a good weekend guys, I'll see you on Monday. Bye. Okay, so now it's part of the video where I talk about what I learned and what I could do differently. I probably should have planned the pattern a little bit better. I would have loved to have made it like more of like a mosaic look with all the different types of wood that I used. However, I didn't really have a plan going into this. I kind of just went with the flow. This project was very spontaneous. I'll definitely implement it into my next end grain project that I do. When you're making anything end grain, the process itself is pretty straightforward. I think it's the preparation that really sets one project apart from the other. And so this was definitely a learning experience in that regard. I absolutely loved how this table turned out. The end grain checkerboard tabletop is really quite special. I was just trying to like challenge myself to think outside the box a little bit more, and it was so satisfying putting it into Victoria and Will's bedroom. Thanks for joining me on this absolutely crazy project. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.